of the season, Aston Martin was a major surprise as they were the second quickest team and were the ones challenging Red Bull the most in the hands of Fernando Alonso. They were quite far ahead of Mercedes and Ferrari, and it was looking like they would finish comfortably in P2 as they were getting podiums in almost every race. However, right now that looks very optimistic for Aston Martin as they have fallen back behind a lot of teams since many have bought their first major upgrade packages. They have struggled massively ever since the Canadian Grand Prix, which is when the first team brought their first major upgrades, and they have only been picking up low points in P7 and P8 for example, which is the best they can do right now. They can easily make a comeback and fight for P2 in the championship if they bring more upgrades, which is hard to say as many teams are already focusing on their 2024 car. But it will be interesting to see what happens as the season goes on. In today's video, we will be talking about the poor performance since the upgrades and why they are falling back. Then we will be talking about some of the comments that were made by Alonso and how he was made to look kind of silly. And to end off this video, we'll be touching on where Aston Martin will finish in the championship and how McLaren could catch them. Let's get straight into the action, shall we? Aston Martin brought their first major upgrade package at the Canadian Grand Prix, and at first it looked like they would do their job in helping them finish P2 in the championship. They would have Alonso finish in P2 and only 10 seconds off Verstappen, which is quite close when you look at the whole season so far. So in the following races, the team would look to keep this momentum, but that was not the case. In Austria, they looked to have been bypassed by Mercedes and even Aston Martin. They would have Alonso finish in P5 with the drama with track limits. It pushed them up, but in the race, they looked slower than their closest rivals, which could be written off as a one-off. In Silverstone, Alonso would take home P7, and it looked like McLaren had now taken the step forward ahead of Aston Martin, but mainly Alonso. In Hungary, this was one of the most hyped up tracks for the team green, as one where they even said they could get their first win. However, when we came to the circuit, it was clear that was not going to happen. They were the 5th quickest team and were closer to the midfield than the win. The upgrades only seem to have worked in Canada since they were brought in, and you cannot say that that is due to the tracks we have been at since, as they have all been very different in their characteristics. The poor showing in Hungary was one which was very worrying for the team, as it suits their car with a lot of low speed corners, which the Aston Martin really likes, as we saw in Monaco. There's been no real indication from the team into why they have fallen back so far behind the teams that are now fighting for the podium. They are probably on the same amount of pace as Ferrari now, who were a million miles ahead. So it's either Ferrari have had their upgrades work very well, or Aston Martin have got their upgrades wrong. Mercedes have looked better and better, even with Hamilton getting pole in Hungary, which is a track that doesn't exactly suit the Mercedes. And that says a lot about how badly Aston Martin has fallen since Canada. McLaren is the team who have jumped almost everyone, including Aston Martin, and has taken the role of being the second quickest team and the one who can challenge Red Bull the most when it comes to race pace and even qualify. Aston Martin needs to find out soon what has gone wrong and try to fix it very soon if they want to finish as high as the standings as possible. P2 was probably the goal once they came out the first couple of races, and they can still do it if they still put some focus on this season, or they could compromise this year. Overall, Aston Martin has fallen back a lot, and it's been very unexpected to say the least, and they need to find a way back to fighting for podiums once again. Why do you think that Aston Martin has fallen back behind their rivals? Can they make another mid-season comeback? Drop a comment below and let us know what you think about the team in green this season. Moving on to how Fernando Alonso has been made to look kind of silly after some comments he made after the Spanish Grand Prix. The race was a bad one for Aston Martin and Alonso due to him having damage which hurt his whole weekend. But after the race, Alonso said that it would be the final race for the team without a podium. That statement was very bold, and it proved to be working in the following race in Canada, with them taking home a P2. However, ever since then, in the following 3 races, they were a million miles away from being on the podium. These comments have looked kind of silly and have kind of reflected on how far Aston Martin has fallen back from the expectations of Alonso. Even getting points in every race would have been huge for the team last year, but this season, the expectations of a podium in most races has been the minimum. Alonso was clearly confident that these upgrades would give them a massive boost ahead of the rest fighting for the final podium places, but the reality is far from the truth. Upgrades may have actually made the car worse, which could have happened, or they have dropped the ball and have not been as aggressive and consistent on their upgrades like the others have been. Teams like Mercedes have consistently been bringing in these small upgrades that have been making them a tenth or so quicker, whilst Aston Martin has only brought in one real upgrade to the track. Alonso has been made to look very silly with what he has said, but at the time he believed in it and clearly did not think that teams like McLaren would go past them with just a few upgrades. What do you think has gone wrong for Aston Martin? Was Alonso just being too cocky with what he said about the team? Leave a comment below and let us know what your thoughts are. Our third and final topic is regarding where exactly Aston Martin will finish in the Constructors' Championship this season. We know that P1 is out of the question due to how quick that RB19 is and how good Max Verstappen is this season. The goal was probably P2, but they might even finish in P4 if McLaren keeps up this good form. Ferrari is out of the question and will more likely finish in P5 in the championship unless they can pull out something unbelievable out the bag. The battle will be between Mercedes, Aston Martin and McLaren for P2, P3 and P4 in the standing, and it's very hard to call right now. Each of the Mercedes powered teams is in a different stage of pace in this season, and it's so close and hard to call. Mercedes do look like they can take home a solid P2 if they continue having both drivers up there and getting podiums here and there, as they have a brilliant lineup. McLaren has a massive points gap to the rest, but if they can keep up scoring 20 plus points each weekend whilst others are only getting as low as 5, they can jump the others in Ferrari and even Aston Martin if things keep on going. The team we have been talking about all season sit in P3 in the championship with a gap to both Ferrari and Mercedes, who are below and above them. They can take home P3 if they can find some more form due to the gap they have to McLaren from the start of the season. But it is hard to call, but Aston Martin should have P3 in the championship but may fall to P4. It is all down to what McLaren does. Where do you think that Aston Martin will finish coming to the conclusion of the Abu Dhabi? We'll have to wait a long time to find out, but it will be interesting. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more videos just like this one.